Hello everyone and welcome to the video. Today we're going to be I can't even talk. Today we're going to be talking about Asha Catari and her ascension and basically how she came to be the leader of the Defiance. So in the previous video we talked about the Shade, the Port Scion falling, and how, Zareth was basically not the leader of the Defiance. There was a big correction that I had to do on the uh, on the lore document because previously I had found information that said Zareth was the leader of Defiance, blah, blah, the founder of the Defiance, but it was not true. It's basically like a vision of an alternate reality that could have happened. Anyways, so today, we're talking about Asha Katari's attention. Yes, it's Friday. Asha Katari's ascension. So Asha was the first warrior that Orpheal Farwind ascended through technology in his Arc of the Ascended. The Arc of the Ascended is basically the place where you're sent. As, if you play like a Defiant, right? So you start in Terminus, which is like basically a place in the future, in the absolute future of the world of Telara. Excuse me, I need to drink. Right, so Terminus is where you start out. And you learn a little bit more about your abilities, and you learn a little bit more about the history, and then you piece together. You get to the place where you can get where you can where you can be sent back to the past so that you can change the future, so that the present that you experience in Terminus can never happen, so that the Guardians never win the war. The Defiants are never, basically sent into exile. So basically, you're sent back to make sure that the dragons don't take over, the Guardians don't. There's no civil war basically, and so that you can change the writing on the wall. Um, so yeah, she's the first. She's the first warrior that Orpheus Farwind sent back, to resurrect, basically. And the Ark of yes, so the Ark of the Ascended is basically the place where you are sent back to the past, right? So uh, you're basically sent back to where Silver sends you back to where Orpheal was actually starting to work on the Ascended technology. Um, why was she ascended? She died. She was sent to she went to the soul stream. Regulus started tearing her soul apart, trying to recruit her. Or at least that's kind of the understanding of what we realized through questing and stuff like that. So basically, he tried to recruit her in the soul stream because she's a very strong warrior, and she's a very strong soul. She would have been extremely powerful, perhaps even more so than Alsbeth, who, as you'll remember, was an arch nemesis of Asha when she was in school. Yet they were kind of frenemies, actually. So they kind of worked together, but they hated each other. And Alsbeth especially hated Asha because Asha was the goody two shoes, the straight A student, the best student, Orpheal's favorite, the school's favorite, teacher's pet, etc. So she was Asha was going to be a stronger contender than Elsbeth ever could have been. Um, and physically, though she had changed. The process of ascending a dead person is very shocking, I guess, to begin with. But on top of that, Regulus did stuff to her when she was in the soul stream. Like I said, he tried to torture her, he tried to change her, he tried to recruit her, and When his recruitment tactics didn't work, he started to torture her. Sorry, I said that all. I said all that like in opposite of what it should, the order that it should have been in. Anyways, glyphs of planar power flared on her skin when she was ascended. As you can see here, she she does have glyphs. They're pretty big glyphs. They look like lashings basically to me. They look like, glowing lashes that happened to her. And so yes, they're basically planar power. They're pure source stone magic that are flaring on her skin. She has, like I said, she was approached in the Soul Stream by Regulus, who possibly thought her the perfect vessel for his infiltration back on Telara. He would, if not made her a commander like Elsbeth, or even more so, he would have been, possessing her, as he did Adraxis and so on. And subsequently, he tortured her when she refused, and then she was brought back to life by Orpheus. So basically, some people say that it would have been, Regulus's torture that made those glyphs flare on her skin. Some people think it's basically the technology of, Ascension. While she was in the midst of getting tortured, something happened to her, because when we're ascended, the Defiance, anyways, when we're ascended, we don't have these, glyphs of planar power. So basically, pure source stone magic is inside of her. And she did study magic when she was at Quicksilver College. So she's a warrior, but she's like a mage as well. Mentally, she was never quite the same either. And here's a little tidbit of, what what could have been. This is actually like a bit of a story that happened before the game was released. It was from the comic book, because it's talking about in the Shadowlands. Now, as you'll remember, I think I talked about how the Shadowlands was going to be the first zone that the Defiance zone in when they create their character. So the Shadowlands, which people think is like a moon of Telara. Um, Other people think it's the Shadowlands would be the planar death. I don't know. I did make a video of like the cosmos and how Telara is surrounded by all these planes. I have talked about how Telara is at the nexus of the planes. Um, I mean, just make of Shadowlands what you will. I think it's like a moon. I think it's like the planes, I think, are like moons of Telara to me. Orpheus Farwind, her mentor and friend, stood beside her, looking at her with an expression of triumph. He explained that he had used the technology of the ancient Eth to return her to life, and that she was merely the first of the warriors he planned to return. He asked her to be his champion and second in command, continuing the work they had done with the Dragon Slayer Covenant. Now, again, I think the Dragon Slayer Covenant, Orpheus, I don't think was the creator, the founder of the Dragon Slayer Covenant. I think this is, an alternate reality, probably from before Rift was ever released as a game. She agreed, but in agreeing, she admitted much of her motivation sparked from a desire for vengeance on Regulus. Orpheus realized she was not the same young woman who he had sent to Zareth so many decades ago. Physically, she had changed, covered in glyphs of power that flared up on her skin. She was also calmer, quieter, and intensely focused. The headstrong, reckless girl was gone, and in her place was a being that was no longer quite human. If you look at Asha right here, right? She looks very calm and collected, and as the leader of the Defiance, she's very calculating, and I think that's a pretty big trait of the Defiance in general. Is that, being that they believe so much in technology, so much in, the past and the future. They think so much about all of these things that relate to one another. I think that innately they're kind of people that believe in thinking about things over, like thinking over a decision and, tactics and so on. So they're very cold, calculating, and I think it stems from Asha specifically. But as Ascended ourselves, we kind of get that vibe as well within us. Or at least that's, the lore of Defiance in general. Orpheol's other followers could feel the change as well, but were not as easily accepting. Asha's planar powers and eventual role in the fall of Port Sion made her a pariah to all but her closest comrades, but the unease of her fellow Telarans failed to concern her. Asha was intent on her cause, and, together with Orfeel, she would help form a new organization dedicated to saving Telar, the Defiance. Now this is actually from real game lore. The whole, Asha and Orfeel are the leaders of the Defiance. Yes, that is true. However, the whole Shadowlands bit with the Dragon Slayer Covenant, I think this was retconned before the game was released, because we don't hear about the Shadowlands too much in game or at all. I don't think we ever covered that, except yeah, I really don't think we ever covered that in game. Yeah, so interestingly, it appears that Asha's ascension in game was retconned from the comics lore above. The tidbit that I just talked about, in which Ascension could only take place in the Shadowlands. Yes, that's another little bit that I forgot to mention before. So in the Shadowlands, originally, when you were going to, in Alpha, basically, when you were going to create your character, you would land in Shadowlands, and this was the place where you had to ascend as an ascended, as a defiant. Sorry. So, as a Defiant, you would always be reborn in the Shadowlands, which is kind of a place of death to begin with. I mean, the name itself kind of suggests that. Um, yeah, so it could only take place in the Shadowlands, which appears to be on a moon of Telara. So, like I said, I mean, I think that this was this was probably the plane of death, which could, as the as I said, like the cosmos representation that I showed in a previous video was basically kind of basically Telara with surrounded by little moons that that uh, that twirl around it, around Telara. So, and those are the planes, the plane of water, the plane of air, blah blah blah. All of those, they kind of look like moons. So that's where I think that's where in my mind the Shadowlands is basically the plane of death to me. I don't know if this is, canon at this point anymore. Yeah, so this was also the starting zone for Defiance, and before the game was officially released too, before the devs decided that Terminus was a much better setting for a post-apocalyptic Telara. I remember reading something that from devs, I think maybe Captain Cursor, who talked about the Shadowlands and how, it was changed. In Alpha, you were in the Shadowlands, just as the Guardians would start in. Where would they start? I think they started in like a future as well, and they were sent back, if I remember correctly. Basically, the two starting zones for Defiance and Guardians were very different, and yeah, so they decided that Terminus was a better setting because, Defiance are kind of steampunk, right? And the Shadowlands was more uh, deathly and void, void-y than, not void. We're not in WoW, but more death-like, drab and um, not sad, but very depressing, right? It's a very death-like place. And so they decided that Terminus was a better place to start because it's steampunk and it's got, all those technology themes, and you're like piecing together stuff and you're using machines to help your questing along, blah blah blah. Um, So the retcon also included Orpheus Farwind, who is now not the leader of the Dragon Slayer Covenant, if I remember correctly. Like I'll have to go back in game and figure it out for real. But if I remember correctly, Orpheus has nothing to do with the Dragon Slayer Covenant at this point. She does, Asha. She's like the leader of the Dragon Slayer Covenant, not Orpheus, if I remember correctly. I would have to go through questing again, and to be honest, I've done that a lot, and it's kind of very time consuming. But yeah, so enjoy. And did you enjoy this friend here? This is Asha's bodyguard, by the way. He is a Trog from probably from Stonefield. And then we have her friend here, Ron Chaloon, the leader of the Bommy. Hey, he's my guy. He's my leader. My leader. Right? Neil. Whoops. Never mind. Anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's a little tidbit. It's nothing much, but it's a little bit of lore and that's always interesting to find out. Especially if you're starting out in Prime. People who don't necessarily know all the lore, and it's kind of hard to find the lore to be honest. Like you can talk to NPCs and stuff, but it's kind of hard to find the lore in this game. I'll give you guys that. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed. If you have more information about anything that I talked about, go ahead, hit me up, and I'll definitely update. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. See you guys next time.